She said, "Tyler will actually marry me, you're just wasting my time," while I was planning our wedding. So I canceled everything and ghosted her. Now he used her for his real estate license, then left her broke, and she's seeing my wedding photos on social media? Hello everyone, before we get into the video, please take a moment to subscribe and hit the like button if you want more content like this. Thank you. 4 years with Jessica had taught me that love meant paying attention to the small things, and I was convinced I'd found the woman I wanted to spend my life with. We'd built what I thought was a solid relationship in Denver, me working as a civil engineer for the city, her climbing the ladder in corporate finance, both of us splitting everything fairly and talking about long-term plans like adults who actually meant it. What Jessica didn't know was that for the past 3 months, I'd been secretly orchestrating what I hoped would be the perfect proposal and wedding package, because that's just how my mind works. I see a problem, I solve it systematically, and in this case, the problem was that I wanted to marry this woman and give her something unforgettable. I'd already put down a $4,000 deposit on this incredible lakeside resort in Estes Park, Colorado, the kind of place with panoramic mountain views and rustic elegance that Jessica had once described as absolutely magical when we drove past it during a weekend hiking trip. The venue coordinator, Linda, had become my unofficial partner in crime, helping me coordinate everything from the ceremony timeline to the reception layout, and she kept telling me how lucky Jessica was to have someone who thought through every detail months in advance. I'd ordered custom invitations from this boutique stationery company Jessica had bookmarked on Instagram, cream cardstock with gold foil lettering that cost me $800 but looked exactly like something she'd pinned to her vision board. The photographer I'd booked was this acclaimed woman who specialized in outdoor mountain weddings, and after seeing her portfolio, I knew Jessica would cry happy tears just looking at the engagement photos we'd take among the aspen trees. I had spreadsheets tracking every vendor, every deposit, every timeline detail, because that's how I approach everything that matters to me, with careful planning and absolute commitment. The catering alone had cost me $6,500 in deposits, but I'd tasted everything during multiple consultations and could already picture Jessica's face when she tried the herb-crusted salmon that would be our main course. Even the band was locked in, this acoustic trio that played the kind of folk rock music we both loved, the same genre that was playing during our first dance in my apartment kitchen 2 years ago when we were both tipsy on wine and convinced we were the only 2 people in the world who mattered. Between the venue, catering, photography, music, flowers, and all the other pieces of what I hoped would be our perfect day, I was already $12,000 deep in deposits, which represented 4 months of careful saving and budget cuts that Jessica never even noticed. The engagement ring was sitting in my sock drawer, a princess-cut solitaire that had taken me 2 months to select because I'd wanted something classic enough to suit her professional image but unique enough to show I'd actually paid attention to her style preferences over 4 years together. My plan was to propose during a weekend getaway to the venue, let her see the space and fall in love with it, then reveal that I'd already secured our date for the following spring when the wildflowers would be in bloom and the weather would be perfect for outdoor photos. I'd been carrying around vendor contracts and timeline documents in my briefcase for weeks, giddy with the secret and absolutely certain that this level of thoughtful preparation would prove to Jessica once and for all that I wasn't just serious about our future, I was already building it, one carefully planned detail at a time. Everything started changing the night Jessica came home from that Denver Business Network mixer with stars in her eyes and a business card she kept flipping between her fingers like it was made of gold. She'd met Tyler Hoffman, and within 5 minutes of hearing about him, I knew this guy was going to be a problem in ways I couldn't even fully articulate yet. Tyler was everything I wasn't: 34, owner of a real estate investment company, drove a white Tesla Model S, and wore the kind of expensive suits that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Jessica described him as magnetic and visionary, words she'd never used to describe me, and she kept mentioning how he'd singled her out at the networking event, told her she had untapped potential and should consider getting into real estate. Within a week, she'd ordered study materials for the Colorado real estate licensing exam, claiming it was just career diversification and a way to expand her professional horizons. I should have been supportive, and I tried to be, but something about the timing felt off, especially when she started spending her evenings highlighting practice questions instead of watching our usual Netflix shows together. Tyler had given her his personal number for mentoring purposes, and suddenly Jessica was getting texts at all hours with market insights and investment opportunities, messages that made her face light up in ways that reminded me uncomfortably of how she used to look when I'd surprise her with weekend plans. The criticism started small, little comments about how I needed to think bigger and expand my professional network, Observations about how my Honda Civic was practical but not particularly impressive compared to the luxury cars she was seeing at these real estate meetups Tyler kept inviting her to. Our weekend hiking routine, which had been our shared passion for 3 years, suddenly became evidence of my limited ambition. Tyler says successful people invest their free time in activities that build wealth or connections. She told me one Saturday morning when I suggested we drive up to Rocky Mountain National Park. Hiking is just hiking. It doesn't lead anywhere. I pointed out that hiking led to happiness, fitness, and quality time together, but she just shrugged like I was missing some fundamental truth about how successful adults were supposed to live their lives. Tyler had apparently told her that real estate was where smart money goes to multiply, and that someone with her analytical finance background could make serious wealth if she had the right mentor guiding her decisions. The way she talked about him was starting to bother me, not jealousy exactly, but something deeper, like watching someone I loved get slowly recruited by a cult that promised enlightenment through expensive cars and investment portfolios. Tyler's taking me to look at some properties this weekend, she announced one Thursday evening, not asking if I had plans, just informing me that our standing Saturday plans were canceled. He wants to show me what a successful real estate portfolio actually looks like. When I asked if this was still about getting her license or if she was considering actually investing, she looked at me like I'd asked her why water was wet. Alex, Tyler's already making offers on 2 properties this month. He knows what he's doing. The shift was so gradual that I almost missed how completely she'd started measuring our relationship against whatever standard Tyler represented, but by the time I realized what was happening, Jessica was already studying for an exam that had nothing to do with her career and everything to do with impressing a man who drove a Tesla and promised her a different kind of future than the one I'd been secretly planning for months. The irony still kills me. I was literally sitting in Sarah Chin Photography's studio, finalizing the timeline for our engagement shoot and looking at sample albums of mountain weddings, when Jessica texted me that we needed to have a serious conversation about where this relationship is going. Sarah had been showing me these incredible photos of couples against sunset backdrops in Estes Park, the exact same location where I'd reserved our venue, and I was imagining Jessica's reaction when she realized I'd thought of everything, planned everything, made it all real. I drove home with a folder full of photography packages in my briefcase, right next to the venue contract and catering agreements, feeling like I was carrying the blueprint for our perfect future, completely unaware that Jessica had already drafted the termination papers for us in her mind. She was waiting for me in our living room with her real estate study materials spread across the coffee table and this expression I'd never seen before, not angry, not sad, but coldly analytical, like she was preparing to present quarterly projections to a board of directors. Alex, we need to talk about what we want from this relationship, she started, and something in her tone made my stomach drop even though I had no idea what was coming. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and I'm not sure we want the same things. I set my briefcase down carefully, those wedding contracts suddenly feeling like evidence of my own delusion, and asked her what she meant. I mean commitment, Alex. Real commitment. Not just living together and talking about someday, but actually building something meaningful together. The words hit me like a physical blow because I'd spent 3 months doing exactly that, building something meaningful, something permanent, something that would prove once and for all that I was serious about our future. I think we want the same things, I said, fighting the urge to pull out the venue contract and show her exactly how committed I was. Do we? Because Tyler and I were talking yesterday about investment strategies and long-term planning, and he made me realize that some people talk about the future while others actually create it. Tyler and I were talking. Not Tyler was explaining, not I was learning, but Tyler and I were talking like they were partners in some venture I wasn't invited to join. What does Tyler have to do with our relationship? I asked, and Jessica's expression shifted into something that looked almost like pity. Tyler has vision, Alex. He's already planning to expand his business into commercial properties. He's talking about opening a second office in Boulder, maybe Colorado Springs. He thinks big. And I don't. You're a civil engineer who's worked the same job for 3 years. You drive a Honda Civic and think a perfect weekend involves walking around in the mountains for free. That's not thinking big, Alex. That's thinking safe. I could have told her about the promotion I'd been offered, the salary increase that would help pay for our wedding, the house we could afford to buy after we were married. Instead, I asked her directly, "Are you saying you want to break up?" "I'm saying I want someone who's actually ready for marriage, not just the idea of marriage someday when everything feels perfect and safe." The wedding ring hidden in my sock drawer felt like it was burning a hole through the floor above us. "Tyler will actually marry me," she continued, and those words landed like a punch to the solar plexus. He's not afraid of commitment. He has properties, he has plans, he has a vision for what our life could be together. You're just wasting my time. Our life together. She was already planning a life with Tyler while I'd been secretly planning a life with her. So that's it? I managed to ask. 4 years and you're just done? I'm 27 years old, Alex. I can't wait around forever for you to decide if you're ready to be serious about us. I stood up, grabbed my briefcase with all those wedding contracts inside, and walked toward the door without saying another word. Where are you going? She called after me. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You can't even have a difficult conversation without running away. I stopped at the door, briefcase in hand, and turned back to look at the woman I'd planned to propose to in 3 weeks. I'm not running away, Jessica. I'm just not going to beg someone to want a future with me when they've already decided they want it with someone else. I drove around Denver for 2 hours that night, those wedding contracts sitting in the passenger seat like a monument to my own stupidity, and by the time I got home, Jessica was gone, staying at her friend Sarah's place, according to the text she sent me, and I knew with absolute certainty that she was never coming back, not really, because Tyler had already given her everything she thought she wanted from me. The next morning, I did what I do best when faced with a complex problem. I made a systematic plan and executed it with the same methodical precision I brought to engineering projects, except this time I was deconstructing a future instead of building one. First call was to Linda at the Estes Park venue, and explaining the situation to her was somehow worse than the actual breakup because she'd gotten genuinely excited about our wedding over the past 3 months. "Oh honey, I'm so sorry," she said when I told her I needed to cancel everything. "But you know the contract specifies that cancellations within 6 months of the event forfeit the full deposit. $4,000 down the drain, but she agreed to release me from the remaining balance, which would have been another $8,500 on completion. The photographer was more understanding. Sarah Chin had been in the business long enough to know that engagements sometimes don't lead to weddings, and she refunded half my deposit since I was canceling with adequate notice. "I hope you find someone who deserves the kind of thoughtfulness you put into planning this," she told me, and I almost lost it right there on the phone because she understood something Jessica never had. The caterer kept my $2,000 deposit but released me from the contract, the florist kept $800, and the band was actually cool about it. They kept $500 but said they'd give me priority booking if I ever needed them again, which felt optimistic in a way that almost made me laugh. All told, I lost about $7,500 in deposits, but I managed to recover $4,500 that would have been due on completion, and honestly, paying that money felt like the cheapest way to buy my freedom from a relationship that was already over. While I was making cancellation calls, I was also quietly arranging the next phase of my disappearance, because something about Jessica's casual cruelty had clarified exactly how I wanted to handle this situation, completely and permanently. My company had been trying to get someone to transfer to the Austin office for months, and when I called my supervisor Tuesday morning and expressed interest, he practically jumped through the phone with excitement. "Alex, this is perfect timing. We need someone with your infrastructure experience down there, and frankly, you've earned the opportunity after the Mesa Verde project success." The transfer came with a $8,000 raise and moving expenses covered, which felt like the universe apologizing for Jessica's betrayal by handing me a better job in a city where I could start completely fresh. I spent Wednesday and Thursday quietly packing my essential belongings, clothes, electronics, important documents, the engagement ring I'd never given her, and arranging for a moving company to collect my furniture the following week. Jessica was spending most of her time studying at Tyler's place anyway, which gave me the space I needed to extract myself from our shared life without drama or prolonged explanations. Friday morning, she texted me about coming by to get some of her things and maybe talk about how we can work through this, but I was already 3 hours south on I-25, my Honda Civic loaded with everything that mattered, driving toward a city where no one knew about my relationship failures or abandoned wedding plans. The note I left on our kitchen counter was shorter than any wedding vow I'd planned to write. "Found someone who actually wants a future with me. Good luck with Tyler." I'd blocked her number, unfriended her on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, even LinkedIn, because I knew Jessica well enough to know she'd try to maintain some kind of connection that would allow her to keep me as a backup option while she explored her new life with Tyler. My email got changed, my address was no longer available to her, and I'd instructed our mutual friends that I didn't want updates about Jessica's life or relationship status. The nuclear option, Tony from work called it when I explained my strategy, but some situations require total containment to prevent ongoing contamination. By the time Jessica realized I wasn't just taking a break to cool off, I was already setting up my new apartment in Austin, meeting my new colleagues, and discovering that Texas had hiking trails I'd never heard of and barbecue that made Denver's food scene look amateur. My phone buzzed constantly for the first week. Calls from Jessica, texts from her friends, voicemails that started angry and gradually became desperate, but I never listened to them, never read them, never responded to any of it. I'd learned something crucial about my own boundaries during those wedding cancellation calls. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is make it impossible for someone to hurt you again, and sometimes disappearing completely is the only way to preserve whatever dignity you have left after someone casually destroys 4 years of shared history because they found someone with a Tesla and bigger dreams. Austin turned out to be exactly what I didn't know I needed. A city where nobody cared about my relationship history and where my engineering skills were immediately appreciated by colleagues who valued competence over office politics. Through mutual friends back in Denver, I heard that Jessica had passed her real estate licensing exam within 2 months of our breakup, which was impressively fast even if her motivations were questionable, and Tyler had immediately brought her into what he called a joint venture partnership in property flipping. According to the reports filtering back to me, Jessica had invested her entire savings, around $45,000 she'd accumulated from her finance job, into what Tyler described as seed capital for their real estate empire, and she'd also taken out a $25,000 personal loan to maximize their initial investment potential. The whole arrangement sounded exactly like Tyler's brand of smooth-talking nonsense, but Jessica was apparently posting constantly on social media about their power couple business partnership and sharing photos of properties they were evaluating for acquisition potential. I only knew about this because my friend Mike would occasionally forward me screenshots, usually with commentary like, "Dude, you dodged a major bullet." And honestly, seeing Jessica pose in hard hats next to Tyler in expensive suits just confirmed that she'd gotten exactly what she thought she wanted. Meanwhile, I was discovering that Austin had a hiking and outdoor community that made Denver's scene look casual, and it was on a group hike to Hamilton Pool that I met Emma Rodriguez, a landscape architect who specialized in sustainable outdoor design and who laughed at my terrible jokes about geological formations. Emma was everything Jessica wasn't, completely comfortable in hiking boots and no makeup, genuinely interested in the environmental impact of urban development, and passionate about creating outdoor spaces that served communities instead of just looking impressive on Instagram. Our first conversation lasted 3 hours on the trail, covering everything from native plant restoration to the engineering challenges of building trails that could handle Austin's flash flood potential, and I found myself remembering what it felt like to connect with someone who shared my actual interests instead of just tolerating them. "You know what's cool about your job?" Emma asked during our second hike, this time to Enchanted Rock. "You build infrastructure that helps people live better lives, like, fundamentally better. That's real impact." Jessica had never once asked me about the impact of my work, just whether it paid well and offered advancement opportunities. Emma wanted to know about the technical challenges, the problem-solving process, the satisfaction of seeing a project improve people's daily commutes or water quality. When I told her about the sustainable drainage system I designed for a low-income housing development in Denver, she got genuinely excited about how engineering and landscape architecture could work together to create better communities. We started collaborating on a volunteer project, designing and building hiking trail improvements in a state park that had been damaged by erosion, and working alongside Emma taught me what partnership was supposed to feel like. She brought expertise I didn't have, respected the knowledge I contributed, and never once made me feel like my practical, methodical approach to problems was somehow insufficient or boring. "I love how you think through every possible scenario," she told me while we were reviewing drainage calculations for the trail project. "You see problems before they happen and solve them proactively. That's such a valuable skill." Meanwhile, Jessica's social media presence had become a masterclass in lifestyle branding with constant posts about building wealth through strategic partnerships and living the entrepreneur life, alongside photos of her and Tyler at expensive restaurants and real estate conferences. Mike kept sending me updates despite my requests that he stop. She bought a BMW with business loan money, and they're apparently looking at a house together, but Tyler's name isn't on any of the paperwork. The whole situation sounded increasingly sketchy, but I was too busy falling in love with Emma and building a genuinely happy life in Austin to invest much emotional energy in Jessica's poor financial decisions. Emma and I had been dating for 6 months when she got a contract to design the landscaping for a new municipal building, and she asked me to consult on the drainage and water management systems, which turned into our first official professional collaboration and probably the moment I realized I wanted to marry this woman. We spent hours sketching designs that would manage stormwater runoff while creating beautiful outdoor spaces for city employees and visitors, and watching Emma get excited about native plant selection and sustainable irrigation made me understand what Jessica had never grasped, that passion for your work and genuine partnership with someone who shares your values is worth more than any luxury car or expensive lifestyle. The collapse of Jessica's real estate empire happened faster than I would have thought possible, and I only learned about it through Mike's increasingly dramatic text updates that read like a financial thriller with a predictably tragic ending. Tyler had apparently used Jessica's new real estate license to purchase properties in her name while keeping his own assets protected through a web of LLC structures and shell companies that should have been an immediate red flag to anyone with Jessica's finance background. "Dude, it gets worse," Mike texted me in March. Tyler convinced her to co-sign on 3 different investment properties using her credit, plus he's been flipping houses under her license while she handled all the legal liability. She literally signed documents she didn't read because she trusted him. The scheme had worked beautifully during Austin's booming real estate market. Tyler would identify undervalued properties, use Jessica's credit and license to secure them, renovate with borrowed money, then flip them for substantial profits that somehow never made it into Jessica's bank account. According to Mike's sources, Tyler had been transferring ownership of the profitable properties to his shell companies right before closing, leaving Jessica's name on the mortgages and liabilities while the assets disappeared into corporate structures she couldn't access. When the real estate market shifted in early spring and several of their flips failed to sell, Tyler's response was swift and decisive. He liquidated everything he could access, transferred the funds to accounts Jessica couldn't touch, and disappeared so completely that even his office phone was disconnected. "She's looking at over $200,000 in debt," Mike reported. 3 mortgage payments she can't make, contractor bills Tyler never paid, and the state licensing board is investigating violations that happened under her license. Tyler was apparently forging her signature on documents and she's legally responsible for all of it. Jessica had lost her real estate license within weeks of the investigation starting, her credit was destroyed, and she'd had to move back in with her parents in Thornton because she couldn't afford rent anywhere in Denver. The BMW got repossessed, her savings were gone, and Tyler had effectively vanished with what Mike estimated was close to $150,000 in profits from deals that Jessica would be paying for over the next decade. Meanwhile, Emma and I were planning a camping trip to Big Bend National Park, and I was carrying an engagement ring in my backpack that I'd chosen with the same careful attention I'd once put into planning Jessica's wedding, except this time I was certain about the woman I wanted to marry. The ring was a vintage Art Deco design that perfectly matched Emma's style, elegant but not flashy, meaningful but not ostentatious, exactly like Emma herself. "This place is incredible," Emma said on our second night, as we sat by our campfire watching the stars emerge over the Chizos Mountains. "I keep thinking about how you could design trail systems that would give people access to views like this without damaging the ecosystem." That's when I knew it was the perfect moment. Not because of some elaborate plan I'd constructed, but because Emma was being exactly herself, passionate about the intersection of human needs and environmental protection, thinking about problems she wanted to solve and experiences she wanted to create for other people. "Emma," I said, pulling out the ring box, "I love how your mind works. I love how you see possibilities everywhere. I love that you want to build things that make the world better, and I want to spend the rest of my life building things together with you." Her reaction was everything Jessica's would have been and more. Genuine surprise, immediate tears, and then this laugh of pure joy as she tackled me into the dirt beside our campfire. "Yes, obviously yes," she said, and then, "Oh my God, Alex, this ring is perfect. How did you know exactly what I'd want?" I knew because I'd been paying attention for 10 months instead of 4 years, because Emma had never hidden who she was or pretended to want things she didn't actually value, and because when you love someone for the right reasons, understanding what makes them happy becomes intuitive rather than complicated. We spent the rest of that trip planning not just our wedding, but the life we wanted to build together. The house with the garden Emma would design, the hiking trips we'd take, the projects we'd collaborate on, the ordinary Tuesday evenings that would be perfect because we'd be sharing them. Jessica's financial ruin was unfolding in Colorado while Emma and I were falling asleep under the stars in Texas, and I felt nothing but distant sympathy for someone who'd chosen to trust a man who saw her as a useful asset rather than a partner worth protecting. The first sign that Jessica had discovered my engagement came through Mike, who called me 3 days after Emma posted our engagement photos on Instagram with barely contained excitement in his voice. "Bro, Jessica's friend Sarah just called asking if I had your current phone number, and when I said no, she asked if the engagement photos Emma posted were really you." I'd been wondering when this moment would arrive. Emma and I hadn't hidden our relationship, and mutual friends from Denver still followed both of us on social media, so it was inevitable that news of my engagement would filter back to Jessica eventually. "What did you tell her?" asked my. I told her congratulations were in order and that you looked happier than I'd seen you in years, which is completely true, by the way. You and Emma look like you actually enjoy each other's company. Emma's engagement announcement had been simple and genuine. Photos of us hiking in Big Bend with her ring catching the sunlight, a caption about being excited to marry her best friend and adventure partner. No elaborate staging, no lifestyle branding, just two people who were genuinely happy and wanted to share that happiness with friends and family. Within hours of Emma's post, I started getting friend requests and message attempts from accounts I didn't recognize, all with profile photos that looked suspiciously like Jessica using different names and email addresses. The messages started desperate and became increasingly unhinged. "Alex, please just read this. I know this is you, and I made such a terrible mistake. Tyler ruined my entire life, and we had something real. You can't just pretend it never happened." Emma found the whole situation fascinating from a psychological perspective. "She's treating you like a backup plan she can reactivate," Emma observed, scrolling through the blocked message requests on my phone. "But she's not actually apologizing for how she treated you. She's just upset that her other option didn't work out." Emma was absolutely right. Jessica's messages focused entirely on Tyler's betrayal and her current financial problems, with no acknowledgement of how she'd casually destroyed our 4-year relationship the moment she found someone who looked more profitable. When Jessica somehow got hold of my work email and sent a novel-length message detailing Tyler's fraud and her financial ruin, I felt genuine sympathy for what she'd been through while also recognizing that her suffering didn't create any obligation for me to rescue her. Our wedding was everything the one I'd planned with Jessica should have been. Intimate ceremony at Emma's family vineyard in Sonoma County, surrounded by people who actually wanted to celebrate our partnership instead of just networking and posting Instagram content. Emma had designed all the floral arrangements herself using native California plants, and the whole event felt like an extension of who we were together rather than some performance for social media. My best man was Emma's brother Carlos, who'd become one of my closest friends, and Emma's maid of honor was her college roommate Lisa, who told me privately that she'd never seen Emma happier than she'd been since we started dating. The wedding photos Emma posted showed us laughing during our vows, dancing badly to the acoustic guitar player we'd hired, and looking genuinely comfortable in our own skin rather than posed for maximum impact. "These are the most beautiful wedding photos I've ever seen," Emma's mom told us. "You both look like yourselves, just happier." That's exactly what I'd wanted. Documentation of the happiest day of our lives, not content designed to make other people jealous. Jessica's response to our wedding photos was swift and devastating, a series of increasingly desperate messages sent from different email addresses and social media accounts, each one revealing more about her current situation and mental state. "Tyler left me with over $200,000 in debt and I lost my license and I'm living with my parents and working retail at 28 years old while you're posting perfect wedding photos like some fairy tale." The message that finally made me respond came 6 months after our wedding, when Emma and I had just bought our first house together, a 1950s bungalow with a huge backyard that Emma was already designing into a sustainable garden paradise. "I saw the house photos Emma posted and I just need you to know that I understand now what I threw away. Tyler never loved me, he used me, but what we had was real and I destroyed it because I was scared and shallow and stupid. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know that I'm sorry." I showed the message to Emma, who was pregnant with our first child and glowing with the kind of contentment that comes from building a life with someone who actually appreciates what you bring to the partnership. "You should respond if you want to," she said. "I'm not threatened by your past, and maybe she needs to hear from you to get closure." My response was brief and honest. "Jessica, I'm genuinely sorry about what Tyler did to you. That was financial abuse and you didn't deserve it. But what happened between us wasn't about Tyler, it was about you deciding I wasn't good enough for the life you wanted. I hope you rebuild and find happiness, but we're not compatible and we never were. I wish you well." She never responded, and I never heard from her again through any channel. 2 years later, Emma and I are expecting our second child. Our rescue dog Max has claimed the entire backyard as his kingdom, and the garden Emma designed has become the neighborhood gathering spot for families who want their kids to play in beautiful, sustainable outdoor space. Sometimes I think about the wedding I'd planned with Jessica, all that careful preparation for a future with someone who saw me as insufficient, and I'm grateful she had the courage to break up with me because it led me to Emma, who sees my methodical planning and attention to detail as evidence that I love her rather than proof that I'm boring. The life Emma and I built together isn't flashy or Instagram-worthy, but it's exactly what both of us actually wanted: partnership, shared values, genuine affection, and the quiet satisfaction of creating something meaningful together, one carefully planned day at a time.